So you know you need to keep your branding consistent if you want your brand to be memorable and recognizable. But how do you maintain that consistency and make sure that you don't end up straying and accidentally making your brand look like a mess? What every business needs to maintain brand consistency is a special document called a brand style guide. So in this video, we're going to look at what I recommend including in that brand style guide so that it's going to be a really effective document for you, and it's going to help you really stay on brand, really consistent, and just make things so much easier for you so that you feel really certain about how your brand should look. So first of all, a lot of brand style guides that you might come across, maybe from big businesses or from other brands, or even some templates you've come across, they will often dive straight into the brand elements. Straight away, you're looking at how the logo looks, the colors that are included, and the fonts. But I like to start off a little bit before that and have a section all about the brand foundations and the brand's strategy. This way, it really makes it clear about what the brand is communicating, so that over time, if you need to add some extra elements, or if you're doing a sub-brand, something that's coming off your main branding, you can always go back to what it is your brand messaging is all about, that strategy and foundation behind your brand, and that way, no matter what you create in the future, you're always going to maintain that brand consistency. It also means that over time, if your brand changes in some way, maybe you change your audience, maybe you pivot in some way, maybe you start adding new products, you can keep going back to what you had written and make those tweaks, and then you can see where you might need to adjust your branding to suit those changes you've made. So it can be really valuable to actually include that in your brand style guide, because it's a reminder of, well, what were we communicating here? And are we still communicating that, or are we changing things? And if I'm adding something new, am I still aligning with what I want to communicate? It also serves as a constant reminder for you about what it is you're trying to communicate, how you want your brand to feel, what message are you trying to get out there in the world. So as you create things like content and other things, and not just purely using brand elements, but you're creating other things, maybe video, maybe blog posts, you're always keeping in mind, what is the message of my brand? What am I trying to convey and put out there into the world? So this way, anything you create is going to align with your brand, which is going to be very powerful for making sure that you stay consistent. So in this brand foundation section, some of the things that I like to include are things like your brand's vision, your brand's mission, your brand's values, your target audience, your brand story, your brand positioning. And in terms of positioning, I also like to compare it to some other similar brands so you can see really where you sit in the marketplace. And of course, your brand message. Having this section with all these things is going to be so valuable. Now, before jumping into the next section, I did want to let you know that I do have a template for creating a brand style guide like this, one that has all those sections in the start and then moves on to the actual brand identity. So if you're thinking, oh, this sounds great, all these things to include, but oh, it's a lot of work starting from scratch, if you would like a template, check out the link in my description below where you can find the template to build your own brand style guide. All right, so now we're moving into the feeling of the brand. So this is where we're going to put in your brand mood board and also keywords. So this is really helping to just set up the tone. So we've gone from all these wordy things about your brand messaging, what it should say, who it should be targeting, and all that sort of stuff. Now we're starting to bring in the visuals by having that initial mood board you created when you first started working on your branding and the keywords. This is really going to help set the tone for that visual feel and for your brand message and how it plays out visually and that overall feeling you're trying to create. So again, anytime that you create something new for your brand, you're checking, does it have that feel? Do those keywords for my branding really shine through in what I'm creating? Now we can move into your brand elements. So then we move into your brand elements along with rules for how we use them. We don't want to just simply plonk on the page all your brand elements, just put your logo, put your colors. You really want to, in this document, lay out how these brand elements should and shouldn't be used. So really setting down the rules for the use of these elements. So first off, I like to include the logo. Now also I'll include the logo variations, submarks, and fave icon. So basically every type of version of the logo, and then showing the spacing around the logo, what colors the logo can and can't be used in, all those rules about how you can use your logo. You could say it can only be used at this size, it can never get smaller than this. If you need to put it in a space that is vertical or horizontal, use this particular logo. So specify for each logo variation when it should be used. So say in this circumstance, use this logo. In this circumstance, use this logo. If it's on a dark background, use this white one. If it's on a light background, use this particular color. Things like that. So really laying down the rules for the usage of your logo. And it's also great to have examples. So if you're saying that you should use the white logo when you've got a dark background, you may actually want to have a beautiful image of your white logo on a dark, maybe on a photo background to really showcase how that should look and how it plays out. You can even have a few decorative pages in there laying out your logo in different ways just to really showcase how it can be used and how it should look. Then you have your fonts. So this is where you lay out all the fonts that you use in your brand and how they are used. So in terms of usage, it will be things like saying this is the header font, so we always use this for headers, and then saying this is the body font, we always use that for body copy, and this is the max size this can go, or this is the minimum size it can go. These are the colors you can use these fonts in. All those kinds of rules. So no matter what kind of rules you choose for your own branding, make it clear so that you're going to be consistent with it. So it's really about thinking about what is important to you in terms of how different brand elements are used. You may even want to do some mock-up graphics and start to notice certain things that you think, no, I don't want that to ever happen, or I do want it to be used this way. So you can start to see how you want it to play out. So you might say, I don't ever want my body copy to be in all caps. I don't like that look. I don't want it to be used that way. Or maybe you're saying it should be used in all caps when it's a subtitle. All those tiny little things. So really test them out, think about them, and make it clear in your brand style guide. So then you have your color palette, and this can actually be a little bit of a big section because color is complex in the way that it is used and applied. So of course you want to show what your main colors are, any secondary color palette, and also have all the color codes. So think about the hex code, the RGB codes, the CMYK code. If you're using Pantones, the Pantone numbers. Making sure they're all in there so that you're always using the exact color and not just guessing or using an eyedropper. It's always the exact colors being used. And then you start to break down the rules of how these colors are used. So this could include things like ratio of color, saying that this color is used this amount compared to this color being used that amount. You can say how it's used, so these colors can be used for backgrounds, these colors can be used for text, these colors can be used for graphic elements, things like that. And then also what does and doesn't work together. So you can actually show what colors don't work well together. So say we can't have yellow on red, but we can have red on yellow, as in like red text on yellow, that sort of thing, where you're really breaking down how that color can be applied and what circumstances it is not going to work and you shouldn't be using two colors together. So I like to create a bit of a breakdown where I basically put a little box of color with some text and I go through every single color combination so then I can see which ones are really poorly contrasting, do not work, and say no, you shouldn't use them like this, and which ones look really good and say yes, these ones are great, you can use them this way. So this too is where you can start to think about colors that you are happy to use as background colors, colors that you don't ever want to be used as background colors, and all those sort of things, so that you can start to really set those rules for how the colors should be applied. So after this, you're going to have any other brand elements you have. So this will vary from brand to brand. There'll be things like icons and patterns and graphic elements and illustrations, basically whatever other elements your brand has. And along with each, again, you want to have any rules for how they should be used, spacing around them, how small or how big they can be, what colors they can be used in, all those sort of things. So then we move on to your brand voice. Now, not everyone includes these, again, in brand style guides, but I think it's really important because it's another element that brings together that consistency in your branding, getting clear on how your brand actually sounds. So how I like to do this is with a table, basically laying out all the different ways the brand voice sounds, and then some do's and don'ts with that. So that it makes it very clear what that actually means, because someone might interpret a word like friendly in different ways. And so make it really clear what that actually means. So you could say friendly. So do's always sounding approachable and kind and down to earth. But the don'ts could be, the don'ts might be something like not too silly, still keep it fairly professional, things like that. So you really want to make it clear what that word means to you and how that actually affects your brand voice and how you sound. You may even want to include words that you commonly say, like common phrases, or certain words that you do not say. So if there's certain words you're like, my brand never says that, make sure you include that too. It's all really important. Finally, you can showcase some of the ways that your brand shows up. So this is another one that really varies from brand to brand. So it could be things like your social media, it could be business cards, cards, or it could be packaging. So really getting clear about how your brand looks in certain circumstances that are very vital to your business. So if you've got a physical product business, you're going to want to show how your packaging looks. If you've got a store, you're going to want to show how some of your signage looks. If you've got an online business where you're very present on social media, you probably want to show how your social media should look. It can be really valuable because it helps show how your brand actually shows up, certain key touch points. So things that people are going to see all the time with your brand. So if you sell a physical product, people are going to be constantly seeing your packaging. So it's really important to get clear on how that should look. If you have an online business, people are going to be constantly seeing your Instagram, for example. So you want to get clear about how that should look. So think about what's really vital to your business. What are the things that are people most exposed to that you want to get really clear about how that should look, and any rules around it too, maybe some examples. So for example, if you did Instagram, showing some example posts, maybe some key templates that you use, things like that. And I like to finalize the guide with a filing section. So this can be helpful if you are sharing your branding with other people. If ever you need some help with something and you need to share it with other people, just having a section that breaks down how your files are actually laid out, so what folder you'd find certain things in, and also the file types. So what the file types are, so saying I've got EPS, JPEG, PNG, and what circumstances different file types should be used. That way, if you share it with other people and they need to grab all your brand elements to create something for you, they can easily see what's available to them and which type of file they should be grabbing. So if you haven't already, make sure you work on your brand style guide. That way you can be super consistent with your brand and create a really strong brand identity that you also feel very certain about, because you've got this document that says exactly how it should look and feel, and you feel really sure about, this is my brand, this is how I look, this is how I show up. And you've got so much more direction then. If you need a bit of extra help and want to check out the template I have, check out the link in the description below. It's both a Canva file and an InDesign file, so if you use either software, you can use it. So I hope you would find that helpful. And of course, if you'd like to learn more about branding, graphic design, and creativity, make sure you subscribe to this channel, and I'll see you next time.